Welcome once again to In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics. And Thursday, July 29th, a big day at training camp. Day 2 for the Cincinnati Bengals was a big day because the legendary Blond Bombshell, Boomer Esiason, came to town. And he sat down with Joe Burrow doing a little segment for NFL Network that was really, really interesting to see because Joe Burrow was making some comments about Boomer Esiason's performance during the Super Bowl run in Super Bowl 23, the season 1988-89, and Boomer Esiason making comments about Joe Burrow's performance his rookie season. It was really interesting to watch these two guys, the things they had to say, the things they saw, the finer points of each play. I mean, it's very, very interesting when a couple of high football IQ quarterbacks get together. It was great. It really was. And after that little opportunity, Dan Hoard and I had a chance to sit down with Boomer Esiason. And we talked a lot of football. There's no question about that. But the real significant conversation came at the very end when I asked Boomer about his son Gunnar and the battle with cystic fibrosis. That's been a lifelong battle for Gunnar, and it was pretty emotional, really. And Boomer Esiason, it was all about life at this point in time. When he's talking about being a dad, his son Gunnar is now married, and he's going to have a son. Boomer Esiason is going to be a grandfather to a bouncing baby boy here very shortly. I mean, it's amazing what Boomer dedicated his life to making Gunnar's life as good a quality life as he possibly could. And in so doing, he's not only helped Gunnar, but he's helped a lot of people afflicted with cystic fibrosis. Boomer Esiason's a special guy. You're going to want to listen to this.
What's the first time you met him when he came to CBS for the Heisman Trophy, ceremony type deal show? What was your first impression of him? What was it about him that stood out to you?
I was surprised how big he was. He didn't look that big on TV,
Right.
maybe because he was playing at LSU and he's playing against other big teams, and he was on a big team himself, but I was shocked at how big he was. I thought he was 2 inches smaller than that, and seeing him now that was probably about, 18, 19 months ago, maybe 20 months ago. He's a man now. He's a full-fledged man. So he looks great. And I know he was dedicated this offseason to overcoming the knee injury, which is another part of the responsibility of you as a player and, of course, the ultimate leader of the team. So he's dedicated himself to be ready to go 100%, and I think all the players will respond to that.
So with the segment you recorded today, that's the longest amount of time you've spent with him so far. What stood out in that conversation?
He's pretty relaxed. I mean, he could do TV right now if he wanted to. I'm like, what? You just did that in one take. Hold on. It's not supposed to be that easy. But I guess this generation's a little bit more advanced than our generation is. He knows his stuff. He knows his players. He knows where credit needs to be given. You could tell that. He wasn't sitting there extolling his own virtues. He was talking about his center. He's talking about his wide receiver, talking about his running back. Look at this block here by this offensive tackle. I mean, so he loves his coaches, and you could tell that, that part of him, that is the biggest question mark for every coaching staff and every organization, is easily answered, and he has it. He definitely has it.
The thing that a trait that you and he have in common, in my opinion, you both have unbelievable people skills, and you make everybody feel important. There's not one guy that's involved in the mix that you don't make feel like he's the most important guy, and his contribution is the most important. That's a hell of a talent to have.
Hell yeah, it is probably the most important talent, especially when you're in a huddle with 10 guys, games on the line. They're looking at you. They know whether or not you have what it takes to call the right play, to get the team into the right play, to make sure you have the right pass protection, communicating with your other 10 players within 5-second sound bites at the line of scrimmage, whether it be hand signals, whether it be yelling something at the top of your lungs, but just generally leading your football team. So it's an attribute that you want to be able to check the boxes of a player. So he's got the size, he's got the arm strength, he can run. And now he has the most important aspect to who he is, and that's the dedication to the game that everybody else feeds off of. But he does it in a way that is not condescending, which is really important for a leader to carry himself that way. So if I know one thing, he's a better player than I ever was already. I can see it.
You think that, really?
Yes, I do think it. And he's a much more accurate passer than I was, but he's also fearless. He's not afraid to throw the ball down the field, which is, in today's game, is going to be valuable for them to move forward and to be successful. I think he'll be in the running for comeback player of the year, I believe. Even though he played 10 games, he still got hurt. He still had to overcome an injury here this offseason. And I think they have an underrated, sneaky kind of talent here. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're going 12-5, but I think that they're going to be in the mix because these other teams in this division aren't perfect. They all have scars or warts somewhere along the line. And, Cleveland is probably the best team, I think, but that doesn't mean that Cincinnati can't sneak up on them as well.
Ken Anderson told me last week that Burrow's going to be better than he ever was. You're saying that he already is. I think that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's pretty extraordinary that the two best quarterbacks in this franchise's history have seen a guy play 10 games at the NFL level and are already saying those types of things.
Well, the only reason I said that is because Carson Palmer told me that. And he's another one. Jordan worked with Joe a lot when he was coming out in college, and Carson told me, Boomer, this kid is great. And he was not wishing for the Bengals to draft him. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. He's from this area. This is the perfect guy for this team. It's a can't miss. And I think we all think that because, look, he won a Heisman, won the national championship. So his arc of success is far ahead of where we were at this time in our careers. And I think that's why we all feel this way. So it's a good thing to feel this way. There's a lot of pressure on the young man, but he seems like to absorb it. Seems like he absorbs it very well, and probably fuels him to be even greater. And hopefully he does. We all want a Super Bowl championship. That would be great. And maybe that would kick off this whole new kind of reflecting back on the great players of this organization, which has been long overdue.
When I played in the 70s and 80s, the game was one way. When you guys were playing in the late 80s and into the 90s, that Super Bowl era, it was a lot different. How different is today's game from when you played?
More wide open now than ever before. The rules are such where offenses really need to be able to throw the ball down the field to big wide receivers. And this is exactly what the Bengals have. They're loaded at these positions. Jamar Chase, has the potential to be Rookie of the Year. That's how good I think that this team can be offensively, especially with Joe and Jamar and their history at LSU. But, back in our day, it was more run-oriented. I still think you have to run the ball effectively. You still have to be a more physical team than the team you're playing against. You can only, especially in outdoor weather stadiums like we have at Paul Brown Stadium, you have to be able to run the football. It can't always be about throwing the ball 45 times and completing, 35 passes for 400 yards, because you're going to end up losing those games if the other team is controlling the football. So I think there still has to be balance, but there's definitely an uptick in the big play capabilities of the offense since we were playing.
Final question for me. What do you think the biggest challenge is he faces coming back from his knee injury?
Just trusting that he's 100%. That first couple of times he gets hit, I'm sure every running back will tell you that. Every wide receiver will tell you that. Anybody who's ever played and had a knee injury will tell you that. So it's going to be trusting that it's stable and that he can take a hit. I think he feels pretty comfortable about it just talking to him. But that's probably the biggest thing. And I bet you he's itching to get on the field. He sat there and he told me he watched all of Justin Herbert's games and how much fun it was to watch Justin Herbert. He wants to be that guy again. And I know he can't wait to get back on the field. So I think he's going to be ready and raring to go, and it's going to be fun to watch.
A quick question. I have one more, a follow-up to what you're talking about, get hit. Everybody has boxes to check after surgery and getting the hit. That one hit is the final one, get up, yeah, I'm good. Do you think he should play in the preseason? He seems like he wants to take some snaps in the preseason, and the organization doesn't want any part of it. What do you think, Boomer?
I think I would think like him. I'd want to play. Yeah. I wanted to play in the preseason. I wanted to get hit. I wanted to feel the rush of the game, even though the game didn't mean anything. You're still out there with your teammates. You're calling your plays, even though they may be the most basic of plays. But you still want to feel like you can go out there and do it. And I hope they let him play at some point. I'm not saying that I doubt the third preseason game any starter is playing. Right. So it's probably going to be the second preseason game. I would think at least give him a couple series or give him a quarter or give him 2 quarters and just let him wet his feet, let him know that knee's okay, and let him take some hits. I mean, it's part of the game. That's part of the whole situation. And look, he's been out now for, 8 months, I guess, or 9 months?
It'll be 9.
Yeah, 9 months. So I think he's ready to go. And he's not a running back. He's a quarterback, and he needs to feel the pressure and feel the pocket and live hitting. So that's why I would want him to play, and I know that I would want to play.
Me too. I mean, I said the same thing as players all want to get, before the regular season starts, you want to take that hit and get up and say, final box checked, everything's good. All right, my last question. And can't talk to you without talking about Gunnar. Yeah. And we're all dads here. What you've done as a father chokes me up. Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. And your son, you've extended his life. You've given him a better quality of life. He just got married. I mean, boomer. It's unbelievable what you've done.
I will tell you, it's probably my proudest moment is watching him walk down the aisle. But right prior to that, a lot of people didn't know that it was on Father's Day weekend. I don't know if they set that up. I'm not really sure because Darcy, his wife, is really close with her dad as well. And the Thursday night before the wedding, he and Darcy handed me my Father's Day gift, and it was a sonogram in a plexiglass frame. And I started bawling. I've never been so emotional in my life. And the interesting thing about Gunnar, because of cystic fibrosis, if you want to be the biological father, they have to go in and they have to take your sperm out of your testicles, which is not easy at all. But you have to be dedicated to do this. And he is, and obviously is dedicated, and his wife was going through IVF on the other side for the woman, which is not easy either. And they had to go through all the genetic testing and everything else, and they had 4 eggs, and I'm only saying this publicly because they've written about it and they've talked about it. They placed one in. They didn't know whether it was going to be male or female. And then after about 4 months, they found out that it was a baby boy. Wow. And I've always said this about everything that I've ever done in the world of cystic fibrosis, that my only 2 goals are, one, that my son outlive me, and the second is that he becomes a father himself. And when they handed me that thing, I couldn't talk. My daughter was laughing at me, and that whole weekend was like a blur to me, and it's everything that I could have ever asked for.
Hi, Dave Lapham here. Have you heard about In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, presented by First Star Logistics? Catch new episodes from the world of sports and broadcasting. Search for In the Trenches with Dave Lapham on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.